Hi, welcome back to biology. In this video, we will be discussing a process known as fermentation. So we're going to introduce the idea of cell respiration. How does the last video was all about photosynthesis, so we could simplify and say it was about the chloroplast. These next couple of videos are going to be about the mitochondria. This first one, not focusing on the mitochondria, but we will sort of introduce the way in which carbohydrates are metabolized for energy. So, the food that we take in, living things, plants make their food, we have to consume food. Those are the building blocks for raw material for us to grow and reproduce. My hair is made of keratin protein, but I don't eat hair. Ugh. But the food I eat can be repurposed into the building blocks of any part of me, including hair. But it also provides the energy for activities such as active transport, muscle contraction, synthesizing proteins, making enzymes, breaking things down, all of that. So food energy is measured in calories. Now, the calories that we see on food labels are actually kilocalories, 1,000 of that definition for the calorie. So one food calorie with a capital C, sometimes they say kilocalorie, that the energy of one food calorie could heat a liter of water by 1 degree Celsius. That's a pretty significant amount of energy, and you burn roughly 2,000 of those in a single day. So again, that's really a lot of energy when you think about it. Now, weirdly, when they say you are burning carbohydrates, that really is literally true. It's just that we burn them at an incredibly slow rate. An explosion is you burn a material, but all the material burns instantaneously. So the energy release, rather than the energy being released as it burns over many hours, instead it's all released in a fraction of a second. That's why it explodes. Now, we don't explode, luckily, and we don't spontaneously combust either, but we do burn these carbs in a literal sense. They react with oxygen, and what comes out is, or what we transform carbohydrates into, is carbon dioxide and water. Those are the exact same products of any combustion reaction. You burn something, and it makes carbon dioxide and water. There are a few exceptions. Some metals, when you burn them, just form an oxide, but you really do burn carbohydrates. So the first step in this is glycolysis. Lyse means to break. So the cleaning substance Lysol is called that because it lyses, it breaks apart grease and dirt and grime and whatever. So glycolysis can make a small amount of energy. If you have enough oxygen available, I shouldn't say present, I should say enough available. You always have some oxygen. But if you have enough oxygen, then around 16 times more ATP can be produced versus glycolysis and fermentation, which we will discuss today. But glycolysis does make a tiny bit of energy. So today we will be talking about what happens when there isn't enough oxygen available to completely metabolize or oxidize the glucose molecule. We begin with the glucose molecule, and it is broken into 2 3-carbon molecules. Now, molecules, if you change the number of atoms in any way, they become completely different substances. So pyruvic acid is a 3-carbon molecule derived from glucose. It takes energy to break apart the glucose into 2 pyruvic acids, but each pyruvic acid can make 2 ATP. So we end up with a gain of 2 ATP. Again, this isn't very much. Complete cell respiration will make 16 times more ATP than that. 16 to 18 times more, close to. But, it's a start, at least. To simplify things, we really just, because we're making CO2 as a waste product, we just need to count carbon atoms. So the glucose molecule has been redrawn as just simply 6 carbon atoms, big. here's the pyruvic acid, and again, takes some energy to make it, but we get more energy, twice as much energy out of it. Sorry, there's an electron carrier, and it's very similar in name too. It's NAD+ instead of NADP+. And just like in photosynthesis, it accepts, as the glucose molecule is broken down, it accepts high energy electrons and hydrogen and becomes NADH. Now, cell respiration and photosynthesis are exact opposites. The reactants and the products are simply flip-flopped. And many of the processes are like mirror images as well. In photosynthesis, NADPH was used to make carbohydrates and then converted to NADP+. In cell respiration, NADH is made from the carbohydrates as they're broken down. So, total opposites of each other. This is the same picture slide from before, just with the NADH added in there. So, what if we cannot completely break down the glucose? Well, then we go to fermentation. So the NADH molecule is reused. Well, there's two of them. They are reused, and they will convert the pyruvic acid into different compounds to sustain that tiny trickle of ATP that's made. So this is an anaerobic process, one that does not really use oxygen in order to accomplish. And there's two kinds of fermentation that we will go over, but here's sort of an overview of it. We make the NADH, but then we have to reuse it to convert, in this case, pyruvic acid into lactic acid. So, first is alcohol fermentation. I have a video lab of this for you to check out. Yeast and some other microorganisms, they do this. So the two byproducts, we start with glucose, it's broken down into pyruvic acid. The pyruvic acid is converted by NADH into ethanol. Ethyl alcohol and ethanol are the same thing, and carbon dioxide gas. So there is the overall formula for it. Again, we begin with glucose, which is broken into pyruvic acid. And the only ATP that is made are the net gain of 2 ATP from glycolysis. So that's it. And here's a little visual representation of it. So when you make bread, the yeast consume some of the dough, the starchy, floury dough that's within there, but they don't have access to oxygen. They're trapped, so they release that CO2. The rising of flour is accomplished by carbon dioxide gas released by the yeast. The alcohol evaporates away. Cannot get drunk off of bread. But for beer and wine, which we ferment, many foods are fermented from lactic acid fermentation. But beer and wine are made in controlled settings where we capture all of the alcohol and keep it. The other one, lactic acid fermentation. Animals do lactic acid fermentation, but many microorganisms and prokaryotes can do it as well. So really all that happens is pyruvic acid is converted directly into lactic acid. There's no carbon dioxide, there's no alcohol or anything like that. So for us, we undergo lactic acid fermentation when the demand for oxygen is higher than our ability to get oxygen into our system. So you start getting the burning sensations. That is your body's physiological mechanism to tell you to slow down. You don't have enough oxygen available to get the energy for what you're trying to do. Nothing else really to add there. But again, prokaryotes undergo lactic acid fermentation. So all of these foods are fermented food. You can ferment meats as well. It was a way that we still do it, but a long time ago, before refrigeration, it was one of the major ways we preserved meat for a long time. It also releases vitamin C, I believe, from the meat as well. So it helps us prevent scurvy because we cannot make vitamin C, even though almost all other animals on the planet can. And here's sort of a visual representation of the lactic acid fermentation process. So that wraps this up. We will cover the rest of cell respiration next time, or in the next lecture video. Next video for you to check out is a fermentation lab, however. So thank you for watching.